And then with the other images, we're showing a couple options for what would be, actually, let me pass this out here. So this is a floor plan showing the reconfigured restrooms. So looking at the plan, basically in this orientation here, there's two larger restrooms. One is a women's restroom, and then the other one is a men's restroom. And then we have two smaller restrooms, which really are whoever, it's single user, whoever's there can use them. So it's not really, it's a gender neutral restroom. With exception of the men's is basically a urinal and a water closet in there. So that would actually have two people, the potential for two people to use it at one time. What we did though is, if you notice the two are larger, those are the two wheelchair accessible. So a wheelchair can roll comfortably in there and all the way around and use the restrooms. So those are the two restrooms that would be wheelchair friendly. The other two small ones don't meet those regulations. So does that mean that they're not going to be user friendly? No, not at all. It just means that you can't pivot a wheelchair inside of that space. As we were working through this, we knew that we wanted to give you finishes that were going to be durable, and given the age of the church, also materials that would have a timeless quality to them. We don't want to necessarily pick materials that everybody's going to look at it and say, oh, yeah, I remember the 2020s. That was that color that everybody doesn't like 10 years later. It's sort of like the, avocado appliances back in the 70s. Yeah, for those who remember the avocado appliances, we didn't want to put avocado appliances in your restrooms. And then the other part of this too is the tile industry is one of those industries that it's hit or miss what materials are available and which ones aren't. The other thing that the other part of this is that the temptation often is to go to Lowe's or one of the big boxes and say, oh, they get lots of tile. Our problem is our tile layers almost universally refuse to use those tiles because there's a reason they're less expensive. They're not dimensionally uniform. Basically the tile layers are craftsmen, and those materials just don't live up to their standards. And the reality of it is a lot of the big box stores are starting to go on a lot of the tiles as well. So what we've done is we've made sure that the tiles that we're showing here, one, have that timeless quality, they're easy to maintain. They come with a integral cove base, which basically has a curved wash at the corner of the floor where the wall meets the floor, so that it's easier to clean. So you don't have that sharp corner where it's hard to mop and things like that. So we've taken that all into account with these materials. We had a number of options, and then what we did is working together have narrowed those down to make the choices easier. And that's really what we've got here that we wanted to present. Now, with respect to the images that we have, looking at the first one, there you'll notice a blue band. The blue band on that image is because we are looking at very neutral tiles. We wanted to give a little bit of character to it, a little bit of accent. So I made them blue in the rendering just so they stood out. We probably don't want to go that bold. So we were asked to sort of bring ones that we could get because it's the specialty tiles that are harder to get, because a lot of them are coming from Italy or other countries across the oceans. So what we've got is in these two options, the options that I've got in front of you is the first option is using a darker floor tile. So something like this, and then you'll notice there's a square in the middle of it. And that is looking at possibly something in that color range. Or this color range. Now the white chalking you're seeing on here is it's just dust basically off the tile. So it doesn't have that white veining on there normally. So we could go either color on this as far as the darker color, or this could be the accent to this one just as well. So we basically have three different colors from the floor that we're looking at. The second option is turns it around and says, maybe this is the field, and then this would be the dark accent. So in the second image, it's just reversed as far as that goes. And then,
Paul, do you want to speak to why you're recommending we do the field?
oh, yes. So one of the initial conversation was, thinking we would just do one color in there, but the issue with restrooms is that, lint from paper towels, for instance, land on a floor, and if it's all in a dark one color, it stands out very prominently. One of the little tricks is tile in there, and suddenly the human eye gets confused and looks at this and doesn't look at the little, hopefully, doesn't look at the little lint on the floor. And when there's too much lint on the floor, I'm sure that that's when Russ and his team come into action. So we're hoping that we don't make them run in there continuously. So, okay. So it said that we're doing that, and then also too is it tends to make them feel less institutional by having a little bit more human scale to them as well. Now, with regards to the walls, we're suggesting, I'm going to hold this one up because this is the size that we would recommend using. Doesn't mean this is the color necessarily we're recommending. It is one of the suggested options. These will be going up to about 6 feet. So you'll still have 2 feet of wall, painted wall above that. So if we wanted to introduce some kind of color, that's always an opportunity for that. Because on a couple of these tiles, they're darker. So that would be, we could use lighter color, whether it's white or off-white up there, something like that. With this, we could use a sort of a beige or something up there to sort of darken it back down, because this is a pretty light colored one with the lighting. The reason we're suggesting the bigger tile is less scratch points. It's easier to clean. Basically, every joint is a place where dirt and everything can, be in there. It's a very cleanable surface, very easy, and it's a nice clean look. It's we're just basically looking for something that's not going to be very busy in those spaces. So it's easy just to keep it clean, and visually it's clean as well. And then with that is that accent band, possibly something like that. It gives it a little bit more interest because the tile is not exciting tile. It's pretty monolithic, but it gives us a little character then to it. So now the options that basically for the wall.
Do you need help?
Yeah.
I'm going to run out of hands pretty quickly. And then unfortunately, we didn't have a larger sample of this one, but this one here with the green dot is a third option. And you'll notice I'm pulling these tiles upright for you to view because the simple fact is this is how they would be on the wall. Generally, whenever you look at finishes, you look at them in the orientation that they're going to be seen and experienced. I've seen that happen where not as much with tile, but paint colors. People will look at them laying flat, and they put them on the wall, and they're sure that's not the same color that they picked. It actually is. They just looked at it, the lighting differently. So the way the lighting plays across things really has an impact on it. The other thing is in the restrooms, we're basically in the lighting that you have in the 2 restrooms right now. We're actually reusing the light fixtures, the LED light fixtures, so they're going to be bright. And then we'll have additional ones in the new restrooms as well. So, it's going to be a bright light, much better lighting than these. So it's, that's the other part of it is just think about how it'll look in there with the brighter lights. So, we also, I do have handouts if you really want to look at them. We're using a basic white toilet in the restrooms, and a white sink and a chrome faucet. So if you want to see those, I have those. The pictures on the handouts don't look real good, but the line drawings you can read. For some reason, they didn't print out well. So one of the things we do want to talk about or want to make a decision on is right now we're showing a faucet with a single handle for temperature adjustment. The other option you have is you could have the no touch where you put it on there. What's nice about the single is that if you want cooler water, you can get it, or if you want hotter water, you can get it. The automatics, you are getting whatever we set it to. So it's one of those considerations that you just want to, look at on that. The other part with the automatics is you will have the maintenance of replacing batteries periodically. So you'll have not only the maintenance, but also the waste stream of batteries going, being cycled through.
Question. Your pictures look like maybe you have a gray on one wall and a white on the other.
It's just the way the software does that, just so that you can tell visually which is which.
Could you do that? Gray?
I would recommend that you
All the
do,
same?
yeah, all the same, because the walls are, because the spaces are small. If it were big spaces, we could do something like that, but yeah, because the other thing is, like, for instance, in this room here, and the lighting's throwing it off a little bit, but you notice, like, when you look, you perceive this wall differently than this wall here. Visually, they'll have different tones just by the way your eye looks at them. So that's the way the software does it, so that it mimics what your eye would normally experience.
Why would you consider an all black wall? I don't have any problem on the floor, but I'm trying to think of a black wall in a room that's so small. It's just kind of really claustrophobic.
We're giving you options to consider, and
It's a slate gray.
I don't mind the gray.
No, even the dark one is not black, it's gray.
Well, it's a dark gray.
Yes,
It's
yes,
really
yes.
dark.
It's a dark color.
It's fine on the floor.
What color is the grout? Is the grout dark or light?
So on the floor, I'm going to recommend that we do a charcoal gray grout, because over time, it will become charcoal gray. So we might as well just start at charcoal gray and let it be easier and
The other question I have is, you're gonna get a lot of marks on the floor. I mean, wheelchairs make marks. When you turn them, walkers make marks. How easy are these to clean that? Because
it's pretty easy to clean. When I say pretty easy, it would be easier if we could use a glossy tile, but the problem is it's slippery. So tile is always one of those things, it's a balancing act. Depending on if you start getting a pronounced like the black rubber of certain wheels, a lot of the chairs anymore don't have those type of wheels on them, that would cause those. But if they do, there's a sealer that we can apply over it, that it's easy for, I can make the recommendation to Russ's team, they can apply it. It takes about 2 hours to dry. They'll need to reapply it about every 6 months, but that helps release that much easier. You don't put it down initially, because if you don't need it, then you don't have the maintenance of having to reapply it. because it will over time start to cloud. And so you'll have to strip it off and put it back down. So we'd like to avoid that if we can. These are very easy to maintain as far as, water and a mild cleanser. A lot of times it's white vinegar, actually, quite frankly, is probably the easiest way to do it, a diluted white vinegar. It's a natural, clean way to do it. Avoid the heavy chemicals if we can. Occasionally, you may need to use those, but generally you don't have to.
No, I was going to ask if Paul, at some point you could walk us through the timeline a little bit of when you're starting, and then also what it's going to look like coming up and down the corridor during that period of time.
Right. So we're basically ready to get started. We have the permit as of last Friday or Monday. Great. So we're good to go with the city. What we need to do though is we need to make these selections and get this product in hand, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to start and then have to wait 6 weeks for materials to show up. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to minimize that time impact on you as much as possible. So once we've made these decisions, we'll get everything. When the materials are all in hand, then we're going to start. And for that period of time, basically, we're going to, we clean at the end of every day. We take anything that we, any materials or anything that are outside of that space will be all gone. We'll secure the construction area so nobody can wander in there. And we'll do our best. There will be, at times, there will be dust. It's inevitable with any construction, but we do our best to minimize that impact to you at all. That's one of the things our company does is we do a lot of renovation in occupied spaces. So we're comfortable doing that. What we'll do as far as when the work is going on, we'll have some temporary safety barriers to keep people out. And then at the end of the day, that'll all be secured. So, for the weekends, for services and everything, let's hope we're all in person. As long as in person keeps going, it'll basically, everything will be secured. And the only problem is we won't have use of the restrooms during renovation. We'll have less fixtures.
Your access door, when you come in, are you gonna come in through behind our kitchen over here? There's a double door. Are you gonna try and eliminate that part of the church and try to come in through the closest door to the work that you're going to do?
That probably would be our approach. We haven't actually had those discussions yet. I don't think Stephanie had those discussions specifically. So before we start, we will have all of those discussions so that we know exactly where we're going to. And one of the problems that we may have out on Market Street there is how far can they put the dumpster and still access it? So we may have to put it, I can tell you this, our superintendent and our guys working here would love that dumpster to be as close as possible. Yeah. Chances are, when we're doing the actual demo work, the dumpster will probably be out there. Typically this is a smaller project for us. Typically we would, and especially given your location and, just the community around here, we would probably be looking to empty that or take stuff out daily, or at least every other day we'll be emptying that. So we don't have it around.
Actually, Stephanie said you're gonna haul it away every day.
There we go. We've already decided.
There's no dumpster. Your own trucks are gonna haul it away every day.
There you go. So there's the answer. We prefer to do that on occupied sites. We just find it safer. It's less impact to you guys too.
Another question regarding the colors in the flooring and the walls. Could 4 rooms be different? Or are you thinking all 4 being the same?
We have been thinking all the same. My recommendation would probably just from the maintenance over time, because we'll leave you with some additional tile and materials. You'll have some extra paint for touch up and stuff like that. My recommendation would be probably just keeping it all the same, but we could very easily switch, especially like the accent bands, if you wanted to change those. because I know right now you've got the different colors in the restrooms as well, so. If you're not familiar, I know the women's is blue, powder, like a light blue, and then the men's is sort of, browns and tans, and it's not an exciting space.
It solves the problem, are you?
So we could do something like that with the accent bands possibly, or we could change those out. So do we want to?
Denny has a
I
question.
have a question, because I have zero capability of designing anything in colors, but what would you recommend? Do you have a recommendation?
I do. So I would recommend, I like this one as far as the wall tile.
Okay,
I just like the lighter colored space. The dark gray one, I agree, feels really, really dark. So this would be my preference on the walls. And then on the floor, I would, either of the two darker colors are totally fine. So either one of these.
Or you could do one is the main color, the other is that inset color.
We could, or we could do the lighter one as the inset and pick one of these for the floor. So sort of the first picture. Now, with that said, knowing that, remember when I said there's a cove base, so that cove base goes up about 6 inches. So all the way around the room, you will see either this color sitting at the bottom of this, or you would see this color. Right, and then that right now would be the accent band. And then we just have one more tile on top of that.
It'd be like,
Can you hold up the, can you pair the third floor tile
Yes.
with those other two? Because I'll say that I'm not crazy about the fact that those two darker ones, I don't like them together necessarily, because the one is browner and the one is grayer.
Yes.
I think I like the lighter one with one of the two dark ones, if that makes sense. 'Cause- yeah, versus, see, I like either those two or those two, because when you put those two together, one is brown and one is gray, and then it looks, I think that's a better extra option. With one of these.
Right.
Too many hands.
So basically,
okay.
I guess what we're saying is,
But we have dots, so people can put their
we
favorites.
do have dots. Okay, I am not swaying that decision any further than what I've just done. Now it's all, the hard work's on you guys.
Does anyone have any other questions about the process? And Deanne and Kurt, if you do, please feel free to chime in online. But do you have any other questions about the process? Paul is happy to talk about what's happening outside. We don't have images yet because we're still in conversation, but that also affects Judy. We had a conversation on Thursday about the cistern.
The cistern for the garden.
Oh,
The cistern, water cistern.
And so Paul has some suggestions about the cistern in the garden as well that is impacting this project. So I was telling Stewardship and Finance on Monday night that this is the apropos time for us to look at that as well, because we've known that that's another project that we needed to work on. And now we're not looking at a ramp and stairs anymore. We're actually considering what would become like a walkway into the garden so that everyone goes down a wide, about, you were saying maybe 5-6 foot wide
Yeah.
access ramp. So it's not really a ramp in the
You
traditional.
don't need stairs. You don't need stairs.
And Paul had some interesting suggestions about materials as opposed to pouring in a giant blocks of concrete. So I don't know if you want to speak a little to that, Paul.
Right, so part of the discussion was, one of the issues is that the more we go out towards the planting beds, the ground drops away. So, as it drops away, that means whatever we do has to extend further. If it's a wheelchair, we're limited how steep it can be. And typically that's 1 foot of rise, a minimum of 12 feet.
Okay.
So as we go out, we get more than, it's a little over 3.5 feet out towards the planting beds. So once you start doing that, it ends up being 40 some feet long. But now the other problem is we're only allowed to go 30 inches at a time of drop in one run. Then we have to put landings. So we're talking, upwards of 50 feet just to get down to the planting bed. But the planting beds aren't really, as we were talking about where you really want to end up. You want to end up more at the playground and the beautiful stonework that just went in. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yep.
And then we're out there and we're looking at sort of the rainwater collection area, and it's not attractive. I'm sorry, but it's just not attractive, and especially with young kids, it's probably not safe to see them. So, but the ground on the other side of it is a little higher, and the ground over by the new wall and the playground is higher. So if we can actually run the ramp sort of along the building, it's one of the other things we have to keep in mind is you guys have equipment on top of the roof. And you have rooftop equipment that at some point you'll have to do maintenance on it, which means you've got to get a crane or lifts in along that side of that building. Problem if we go outwards, you now can't drive in and out of there. So we were discussing that too. And so what we started talking about was the cistern. Initially, we were talking maybe bridging over it. But then part of the discussion became, okay, what's really down there? And Russ has tracked down the fellow that put it in. So we need to meet with him and get some more information from him. But what we're looking at is possibly reworking that.
Yeah.
We understand that right now they're running out of water, like during when it is drier. I'm guessing in the last week or last month, they haven't run out of water too many times, unfortunately. It would be nice if it stopped raining every day. But do we put a different cistern in the ground and basically you don't see it, you don't know it's there. And the walkway can go, the path can go across over. And then, because what we're trying to do too is the path doesn't require us to put foundations under it. Now we're gonna have to build up with it. But the cost of foundations, if we can, what we're trying to do is balance to get you as much benefit as we can for the cost that you're spending, as opposed to just building a handicap ramp with guardrails. And quite frankly, they get slippery and steep in the wintertime. Yes.
What you're saying is we're not gonna have to put a 2-foot footer. We're not gonna, the walkway is not gonna need footers.
That's what we're,
So that would save us a lot of money.
yes. Now, up by the door, if you notice in that image of the door, look through the glass, I showed a hint of a railing out there
Yeah.
and a platform. So what we were talking is we may build like almost like a deck type of platform out there. And it's high enough that it's right on the edge of being requiring by code a railing. But I would actually recommend to you just with your, the whole community of using the building, it's better to have the safety railing there. Somebody doesn't walk out or roll out.
Absolutely.
Go off.
Yeah,
So that part will have foundations, but at some point, we're gonna try to get as far as we can without foundations. It's gonna be less maintenance for you over the time too. As far as paving goes, there's different options that we could look at, whether it's concrete. You could always do asphalt, but it could also be a consolidated limestone thing for the towpath. And, the towpath in the firm areas, the bikes have no problem going over it, and I've seen wheelchairs out there too. So that's always an option. That'll have a little bit more maintenance over time, but you're also not making the ground more impervious. So there's a couple different options. We can look at that. And once we figure out exactly where the path is going, we can actually give you costs of the different options. Because it may be one of those things that you say, you know what, Because at some point, we're gonna have to put a stone base, even if we put concrete up there, we're gonna have to have that consolidated base anyways. And you say, you know what, budget wise, I'm not sure we can swing with concrete, but if we can get the stone base that everybody can walk and roll over, you might add the concrete later. So, you know, it will give you options as far as what you end up doing out there.
Do you work with landscape architects, or you do the landscape architecture or whatever? Because we have thought about it, bringing in a couple, interviewing a couple people come in to look at our overall plan,
Mhm.
Memorial Garden.
Right, and we're aware of that, so what
And
I
you work
would,
with the people so that they can.
we would definitely work with them. Yeah, if you have somebody, if you have a landscape architect that involved, absolutely, we'll work with them. You know, the other way is, because I've done a lot of projects where we have worked with landscape architects, I can sometimes anticipate what they're looking for. So what we would do is we would design it in such a way that it'd be easy for them to, you know, integrate it into whatever the end all design becomes. So, does that mean they might not tweak the end of it, how they approach it? They might. But the nice thing is, if it's not concrete, it's easy for them to change. And at some point, you're going to transition to some other kind of path out there anyways. So,
So Paul's gonna give us, I think, some ideas of, he's already shared with us, there are ideas for tanks that can be completely buried, that can be driven over, you know, so if we had to bring in a piece of equipment for, you know, the air conditioner unit or whatever. So there are options that they're gonna get back to us on what, how we can handle the cistern. And just some of the things that he even talked about would double, you know, possibly double the capacity of what we have out there right now anyway. So that would also help the garden have a bigger collection capacity. So they're gonna get back to us on that.
right. And, you know, and part of that too, part of the discussions that we're going to have on that is, you know, we right now have basically come to you with answering the request for a ramp. The cistern was never in that. So there may be additional costs involved with that. And that's going to be part of the decision process that we've got to go through as a team and say, okay, yes, let's do it. Or what can we do otherwise? And we can come up with some creative options then.
So if you start the program in September and you're not into that program outside, is this going to extend it into late fall? Like, do you see what I mean?
We're gonna treat them as two separate projects. So the good news is the door outside.
Yes.
The door to the outside is not a required exit. So when you see it done, it's not gonna have an exit light over top of it. There's multiple reasons we did that for code and to keep your costs down. But it's not a required exit. So what we could do is, in the interim, because obviously the winter will happen at some point. If we can't get everything done outside, we could put a railing on 3 sides of it. Now it's just a platform, you can go out and you can be on the platform and not, you know, we don't have to necessarily impact that whole thing. So we can get the door. What we'd like to do is get everything inside done before it gets cold. And we don't want to have an opening to the outside unprotected, unenclosed, when the temperatures start getting to the 30s. So the goal, we'll almost approach this as 2 projects, if you will, depending on the path that or the timeline that the path develops, because we really just got together in the last week or so and coming together on the ramp and solving for that. So we've got to do some more homework on that, but we don't want to hold up the rest.
So if you're ready, Paul, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And what we'll do to round out our time is, I want to make a plug. Some of you are already looped into the small group that is going to continue to work on this. But if you have interest in being a part of the cistern, the walkway, the materials, the final choice of finishes, because we'll all throw our opinions in tonight, those of us who are here in the room. But if you want to be a part of all of those final decisions, please let Janice know. And you'll be continued. That's not to say that we won't come back as need be to the wider congregation and throw open times like this, if need be, to help be transparent about the process. But what we're going to do is we have the tile selections, the samples that Paul was able to bring. Thank you. And actually, just so that you're aware, we have a piece of thank you, Russ. That's a piece of drywall with our standard church color that we'll lay next to it so that you have a reference point for what we're assuming to paint in the bathroom. Of course, we do use other colors. This is a different color. There's another restroom in the building that has a darker color because the tiles are lighter. We could choose a different color. That, again, small group will do that, but just to give you a touch point on color. And then the smaller tile, of course, with the one green dot that we couldn't get a larger sample of is there. And then inside of this handout that Paul gave us, there are also some other finishes for the accent strip. So you could put so you will get 3 orange dots. You get 1 dot for accent preference. Well, maybe you'll get 4 dots. I don't know. We'll see what Janice chooses. But you get choice on accent, maybe 1 or 2 dots. Choice on floor for the primary and for the special, and choice on wall. So you can stick your dots on the ones you like, okay? All right, so we'll go dotty. And I think while we're, I'll lay, okay, Janice, you've got yours there, great. And I think we'll say goodbye to the people online since they can't join us in putting the dots on. But thank you so much for joining us, Deanne and Kurt, and appreciate everyone else for coming, and Paul, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, so there's one other item, and this, I'm going to just mention this because of a different project, the question came up. One of the things is when you walk into the restrooms, when we're done with this project, we are going to be replacing the exhaust fan on the roof. So when you walk in, you're not going to hear the fan, but the fan will actually be working. So you will actually have exhaust ventilation out of the restrooms because you currently may not.
Terry's been complaining about.